today's business environment, how does a company attract the best and brightest employees? Well, today's article gives organizations and companies some food for thought. Welcome, listeners, to day 2 of our career article for the month of August. We're happy you came back. And I'm joined again by 2 great panelists, Lois and Mike. Thanks for coming back. I'm glad we didn't chase you away yesterday, but I'm hoping that we today again have a great article and learn about a lot of things together. And so what I wanted to ask you as we get off on today is what was something from yesterday's article we can review with our listeners, Lois?
Well, actually, I liked number 5. I think it just gave me a little reminder. The room is filled with introverts. They generally don't speak off the cuff. They like to have an idea fully formed in their heads before they speak about it. And I was just thinking, we don't often use that term off the cuff when referring to that, which means if you speak off the cuff, you say something without having anything prepared. It's just a thought that comes out of your mouth, right? Your first word sort of thing. And I was thinking how we have to think of the introverts and in our company. And I don't know, I often find them actually the brightest people in the company. We should listen to them more often.
Yes, I agree with that. Good. Thank you, Lois. And Mike, what about you? What was something from yesterday's article that you can review with our listeners?
I think point number 3 is especially important to realize. People need to be encouraged for their work, and companies need to know that it doesn't have to be monetary compensation, but it can just be a word of encouragement or just some kind of recognition among the other employees for good ideas. That will continue to foster a good climate where people are not afraid to share.
That's great. And that is what we're trying to do with this career article called An Upgrade for You and Your Organization. How can you improve or create a healthy, wholesome, and happy work environment? Now, yesterday we learned about brainstorming, and I think for myself, I liked the final suggestion mentioned that it would be possible to help everybody understand the purpose of why we're doing this brainstorming session, so they know what they are contributing to the bigger picture. And also we talked yesterday a lot about the energy that's produced during a brainstorming session when we toss some ideas around. Now, to toss something around just means to throw it out or throw it. Here we're talking about ideas being thrown out, and that this is a great point for just leaders to remember when they're thinking about having a brainstorming session. How can you tell your employees about the bigger picture? Why is this helpful to them, not just the company? Well, we're hoping that with this article today, that this too will help improve or upgrade you and your organization. So why don't you join us? Join us on page 17 and on line 1 in the left column for today's reading.
Why should anyone work here? In their newest book, Why Should Anyone Work Here?, Rob Goffey and Gareth Jones turn their attention from leaders to the organizations themselves. Traditionally, companies have sought employees who fit in well with their cultures. Goffey and Jones argue, however, that today organizations need to adapt to their employees and not the other way around. To attract the best and brightest, companies have to be prepared to be more flexible and accommodating. Start by hiring for difference. For difference, organizations must let people be their unique selves. This means that organizations must accommodate and encourage different perspectives, habits, worldviews, and assumptions.
Okay, so we're introduced to this article called Why Should Anyone Work Here? Now, Lois, do you think this is a good question to ask?
Well, why should anyone work here? I would like to think that that's the boss that is asking that question, or maybe the board of the big corporation or whatever. I still like to think that companies care about their employees, want to keep their employees, and want it to be a healthy workplace.
That's good. Mike, what about yourself? This question of why should anyone work here?
Well, I think people today, and always in the past, have wanted to work for a higher purpose. They wanted to know that what they did counted, not only in terms of serving other people, but their work had value and meaning. So I think companies need to realize that that's something that their company should project, that we are a responsible company and that what we do in society matters.
Well, that's great, because actually we're learning about a book. It's called Why Should Anyone Work Here? It's written by Rob Goffey and Gareth Jones. And just to let listeners know a little bit more about Rob Goffey and Gareth Jones, they are professors. They are regarded as Europe's leading experts on organizational culture, leadership, and change. They have a creative management associates company together, or consultancy company together. Rob Goffey himself is a professor of organizational behavior at London Business School. And Gareth Jones, he works at London Business School and is a visiting professor in Madrid as well. So they both have quite the background.
And I gather with their last names, they're from the UK.
They are both British, yes. And so they have written a new book called Why Should Anyone Work Here, from the different studies that they've done over the years. Now, we start off by seeing a term used here. They turn their attention from leaders to the organizations themselves. Lois, what do we mean when we turn our attention to something?
We mean to start to think about or concentrate on a particular thing or person.
Right. So we may have been looking at something else, but then we bring ourselves over to look at another thing or another person.
We often say we've done a 180.
Right.
Right? That's a 180-degree turn. And what we were looking at, as Amanda just said, over here, we're now looking at something over there.
Good. And so here they have, in the past with their research, been looking at leadership, as we've seen there in organizational behavior and leadership. And now they're turning their attention to the organization themselves. What do we learn in the next sentence, Lois?
Well, it says, traditionally, companies have sought employees who fit in well with their cultures. But Goffey and Jones argue that, however, that today organizations need to adapt to their employees and not the other way around. Now, this was interesting to me reading that.
Right. So traditionally, when we say something traditionally, we mean what has been the norm in the past. Companies have looked for or sought employees who fit in, who match well with the company culture. So now we hear Goffey and Jones are introducing a different idea. They say that today's organizations need to do what, Mike?
Well, they need to adapt to their employees, and it says not the other way around. And I think that emphasis focuses on an employee's happiness, their stability, and which produces longevity.
Well, and we see here as we go on that the company wants to attract the best and the brightest. What does it mean, the best and the brightest, Lois?
Well, when I think of that, we hear that term a lot now, to attract the best and the brightest. You want to keep those who are great at what they do.
Good.
Okay, and because they're innovators, and that's why you want that to be happening in your company.
Yes, good. They bring the ideas, and that we say that companies have to be prepared to be what, Mike?
More flexible and more accommodating.
Well, when we mean accommodating, we mean obliging or being able to be open to more ideas or more things that they themselves need to adjust rather than the employee. Well, we go on to learn some of those things that the company can do. And what's the first thing we learn, Lois?
Well, it says, but start by hiring for difference. For difference, organizations must let people be their unique selves. Before that wasn't encouraged so much. And it also says this means that organizations must accommodate and encourage different perspectives, habits, worldviews, and assumptions.
Good. So when we're talking about difference here, we're talking about the uniqueness of each person, right? Distinct personalities, maybe the strengths that people have, what makes this person different from another person. And we see that an organization should encourage, right? Foster different perspectives. A different perspective is a different way of seeing things. Habits, so different ways of doing things. What is a worldview, Mike?
A worldview is something that every person has. It's just their viewpoint on how life was formed, how life should proceed, and in general, what is important in life for them and for those like them.
Good. Okay. And assumptions. And we learn assumption is one of our vocabulary focus words, something that you accept as true without question or proof. So here these authors are encouraging organizations to think about an employee as a unique person rather than, you were mentioning something earlier, Lois, that companies in the past have not done that.
No.
What have they been doing in the past?
Well, my own experience, companies when I was working back in my home country, Canada, they kind of want you all to be the same. It almost felt like a cookie cutter thing. And it wasn't encouraged to be that different, even to dress that different for work. Your own personality couldn't shine through. And because of that, you often felt held back. Now, for some of my work, I worked in finances, banking, and that sort of thing. Maybe those are more of traditional workplaces or whatever. But I do think they would have benefited from having a little bit more uniqueness to the company or the organization.
Right. Now, you mentioned a word there, cookie cutter.
Yes.
What is that?
Cookie cutter means we get that expression from like a baker cutting cookies with their little template, I guess you would call it. And we're all the same. Right. We're all the same. We look the same. We dress the same. We think the same. Makes for a very dull and boring world.
Well, Mike, what do you think of this tip that the authors are giving us?
Well, I think this tip is necessary in today's world because I think younger generations view life differently and they have different needs or different requirements, what they would consider to be a happy life. And so companies need to understand that and value that and turn their attention, as we said earlier, towards how to best meet those needs.
Well, that's great. Well, let's go on in our next reading to learn some more tips that the authors have provided.
People add value. Organizations should help their star employees to shine, but also offer their weaker employees a path to improvement. The authors also suggest that companies look beyond the organization. Developing collaborative and consultative relationships with clients and wider stakeholders will also build value for the firm. Have authenticity. Authentic companies stand for something real, the authors write. It's not enough to have a slick, beneficent mission statement on the website.
Okay, well, let's continue on to learn this next tip. People add value. Now, what do we learn here that organizations should do, Lois?
Well, it says organizations should help their star employees to shine, but also offer their weaker employees a path to improvement. So when I read this earlier, when I was preparing for this, Amanda, I was thinking, well, yes, please have your star employees shine because you want to keep them. And if they're good, they have a term we use back home. I'm not sure if it's used here in Asia, is headhunters. They actually have people looking for them and wanting them as their employees. And then we also have the weaker employees, a path to improvement, because you know what? People often think nowadays you bring everything you know to the job and you know everything now. No, I can attest you learn so much on the job. So maybe you were quite the weak employee when you came, but you've improved in the job. You've had a path to improvement, and now in a matter of time, you will be that star employee.
That's great. Yes. And Mike, what do we learn that the authors suggest companies to do?
Well, it says to offer their weaker employees a path to improvement. And I think of the organization that I work for. We grade our employees by high performance, middle performance, and low performance. Mm-hmm. And we periodically meet with them. Of course, high-performing employees get praise. You're doing a great job, keep it up. Middle employees, they point out just a few areas. They do a good job, but the few areas where they could use help, and they get them some training. And lower-performing employees, it's not a session where you criticize. It's saying, look, we need to work on some of these areas. We want to help you move up to the middle or the higher employee. You can do that. It's still an encouraging thing. So that's important.
I think that's good. This path to improvement is really talking about growth and employees' growth and guiding the employees' growth, especially if you are leading that employee, is also helping them to see what goals to set and what direction to take with that. And they can do that for not only their weaker employees, but also how their star employees can maintain or can even go beyond what they're currently doing, right? It says the authors also suggest that companies look beyond the organization. What do you think that means, Lois?
Well, if your company is looking beyond the organization, it isn't just looking and just having this narrow view of their own company. Maybe they're looking beyond the organization at other organizations that do it better, and they can bring that to the table.
Good. And we see also about developing collaborative and consultative relationships with clients and wider stakeholders. What are we doing when we're developing something collaboratively?
Well, it just means you're working together with a company which may have been a former competitor, but now you say they have value in some of their ideas. We also, maybe we can come together and help both of our businesses to improve and increase our bottom line.
Good. And consultative? Lois, what does consultative mean?
Well, the root word is consult. So I think of, there's often people who are consultants, okay? So maybe you have that going on in your company. People that will consult the company or the organization, and you go to them for their expertise. They often point the finger. They actually will come in and they'll do a true assessment. And they really have nothing to lose. You've only hired them to do this. Maybe you won't ever rehire them again, but maybe you'll never need to hire them again either.
Right. They're looking at the needs of the company, perhaps where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and how the company can improve. Now, we see that when we're thinking beyond the organization here, if you're not just thinking internally how the organization is being managed, but also how the customers bring value, and also other clients or other relationships with other companies will benefit the firm. It says we'll also build value for the firm. So here the authors are just really trying to let the people reading this book know that people do add value to an organization, but it does take some time to find out what people's strengths are, what people's weaknesses are, and perhaps make time to allow people to grow where it's needed. Well, let's go on to see this next tip, which is to have authenticity. Now, Mike, what is authenticity?
Well, authentic just means the quality, it says, of being real or true. So if a company has a mission statement or a statement of purpose, is it meeting that mission statement or statement of purpose? And if it is, then it probably is an authentic company.
That's good. It says authentic companies stand for something real, the authors write. What do we mean when we say stand for something, Lois?
Well, when we say that, Amanda, we mean that there's some substance. They stand for something. You might think of they stand for something that's a great idea, or it might be an ethical thing they stand for. I often think of companies now that stand for things that won't endanger, let's say, an animal that is threatened to be extinct. Things like that.
Right. Okay, good. They say it's not enough to have a slick, and slick here means smooth, beneficent or generous mission statement on the website. So we're not just talking about putting one slogan on a website somewhere and saying this is what we are doing. No, it's talking about being real with people within the actual company. So not just saying, I think we mentioned this yesterday, we're not just saying we're doing something, but we're actually doing it.
Right.
Now, what do you think of this, having authenticity within a company? Do you think this is something that employees regard as valuable in today's climate, Lois?
Definitely, Amanda. I think it is really important that a company be authentic. And especially if you take into consideration what your company is doing. If your company is actually selling something to the public and your own employees see what's going on, but then maybe you're cheating or doing something improper, it's going to come back and bite you. This is particularly applicable if it's something you ingest into your body or something, we say topical, something that you put on you. The war cry goes out nowadays. It will ruin you.
Okay, good. Well, let's continue on to learn a few more tips to finish off for today in our next reading.
Provide meaning. Another imperative for companies that want to attract the best employees is meaning. Today's employees will not just work for the paycheck. They are looking for meaning in their work. Meaning, the authors explain, is at the root of engagement. Thus, organizations must ensure that daily work is intrinsically satisfying. And don't forget, meaningful work, the authors write, is built on the 3 C's: connection, community, and cause. The final imperative, according to the authors, is simple rules. Efficiency does not emerge from entangled bureaucracies or myriad regulations. Simplifying the rules, however, is not as easy as it may sound. Paperwork or processes can proliferate almost without warning, and sometimes the best intentions can lead to the wrong outcomes.
Okay, well, our next tip is to provide meaning. Now, Mike, what do you think it means here, meaning?
Well, meaning just means a sense of purpose or a sense of goodness that a company can project, and employees, they want to know that they're working for an organization that, bottom line, helps people and improves the world. And so they may not make as much money at that job as they would in another profit-oriented business, but that doesn't matter because they know that what they're doing has value and meaning.
Good. So that's another thing that we learn, another imperative that companies need to keep in mind if they want to attract the best and the brightest employees is this sense of purpose, this meaning. We learn in the next sentence, Lois, that today's employees will not just work for the paycheck.
Oh, that's so true. That's where I really like to compare the baby boomers and the Generation X to the millennialists. The millennialists say, I am not just working for a paycheck, and if that's what it turns out to be, I'll be out of here and I'll go look somewhere else. And they really do that because they are looking for meaning in their work. And they want to be able to share that aspect of their work as well, not just what all their paycheck is able to give them to buy them.
And that's exactly what the authors explain in this book, that meaning is at the root of engagement. The meaning or the reason that people will take a certain job. So organizations need to make sure that daily work is intrinsically satisfying. Intrinsically means naturally satisfying. And so we learn that this is a very important tip. But don't forget, we go on to learn that meaningful work, the authors write, is built on the 3 C's: connection, community, and cause. Connection meaning relationship, right? Community, building relationship with your co-workers. And cause, the reason or the purpose or the meaning we've just been talking about. Now, the final imperative we learn here, according to the authors, is simple rules. Keep things simple. Efficiency does not emerge from entangled bureaucracies. Entangled means complicated. Bureaucracies means the system from a large number of regulations or laws. Simplicity or simplifying the rules is not as easy as it sounds. Now, we learn that paperwork or processes can proliferate. Well, that's a hard word, isn't it? Proliferate, grow rapidly without warning. And so some of the best intentions can lead to the wrong outcomes. But this is a lot of different points that we've been talking about today, and we are running out of time, but I hope, readers, that as you look at this even in more detail, or perhaps even decide to pick up the book, Why Should Anyone Want to Work Here, and learn more information, that you've learned a lot from our panelists here today as well. We want to thank you for joining us. Make sure you check out more on the web or the internet. But from Amanda,
Lois,
Mike.
we say goodbye for now.
Goodbye.